Alright, I'm here again, and I'm going to be outside today doing a front brake job on the 2007 Lincoln Navigator. One of the calipers is locked up, and there's the Navigator sitting there in a little bit of snow and icy mud out there. But we're going to move it up onto the edge of the garage sidewalk so we have a solid place to work on it. I guess Tinsel, the Christmas cat here, won't be doing anything to help me out. He's pretty busy with his nap time. Let's see how long this takes. It's 1 o'clock right now in the afternoon on a Saturday, and we're going to be changing a rotor and caliper. Alright, here we can see the hub and rotor assembly after I've removed the brake caliper. And I used the hex bit to remove the 2 mounting bolts for that, and then the little anti-rattle clip, or the tension clip, whatever you want to call it, here. Remove that. Lifted the arms up over here to get it started for the brake pads, and then a big pry bar between the caliper and the bracket, and just pushed it right off. And now I'm going to do the two 18 millimeter bolts on the back side of the caliper bracket, so I can remove the caliper bracket and then remove the disc rotor. And there we go. The 2 bolts came out for the caliper bracket mount, and then the actual rotor just slid right off. And if I would have made better plans, I would have punched out that lug bolt stud and replaced it while I have it here, because all you have to do is rotate it around a little so it's here, the empty area, drive it out with a punch, and then put a new one through from the back side. I would have definitely did that if I would have remembered to get one of those. But it's been doing okay for the last year and a half with only 5 lug nuts, so I'm sure it'll be fine with 5 until I change the brakes again. I just took a little brush and brushed all the loose metal and brake dust off this area back here. Clean the face of this off a little bit. Now we're going to install the new rotor. Just slide it over here. Some people like to add a little anti-seize to the back plate here to keep it from sticking and welding itself on there. I never do it, but it's probably a good idea to go ahead and do that. And then we're going to bolt the back bracket plate back on here with 2 bolts, and we'll be ready to reassemble the new caliper and brake pads then. Here's a look at the caliper pistons. Both of them have cracks in them. They're split right open. Never saw this before. There's the new rotor. I think these were $76 including shipping from Rock Auto, and that was the cheapest place I found to get rotors. And honestly, they look really, really good. They look exactly like the ones that were on it, which I don't know if they're the OEM Motorcraft ones or not. I can't find a name on them. But they have the same kind of design and cutout here with the same step down and curve. They have the same slots and air vents here. I mean, they look actually identical. So I'm sure these are going to work out fine. We're going to spray the surface down front and back with Brake Clean to remove any oily residue that they put on it to keep it from rusting and machining oil and such. So we do that, bolt the back bracket on, and away we go. Alright, here's a couple of quick assembly tips for you. The rotor is going to want to hang off crooked and wobbly when you first put it on because you don't have anything holding it. What I do is get one of the lug nuts and screw it onto one of the studs, and that'll keep your rotor disc nice and straight on the hub while you're trying to assemble the other parts. And this bracket, the caliper bracket, it's got the 2 bolts in it we took off. Start with the top one. The top one's real easy to see and goes right through here. You can actually see where it goes through. Line it up with your eyes without having to crawl under or feel anything. Once the top one started a few turns, then just use it as a pivot and swing the bottom one back and forth until you feel it line up, and the bolt will slide right into the threads, and you can start turning it. Never start tightening any of these up without first turning them by hand several turns to make sure they're not cross-threaded. Always tighten by hand first before applying wrench or an air ratchet to it. But one other thing I wanted to note here really quick, I bought the aftermarket AutoZone brand brake caliper, because that was the best deal. I didn't have to pay for shipping. These things are heavy, and shipping added a lot to it to try and buy it online. I think that was like $85. But there's a difference in it. All these Fords use the 9mm hex for the caliper slide bolt. Except for these aftermarket ones, it's a 7mm. So be aware that you got to have two different wrenches, hex wrenches, when you put this back together. And that's the only thing I'm a little weary of. The original slide bolt here looks to be better quality metal. It's just got a nicer shine to it. It feels like it's a more polished, harder metallic surface. And this looks a little dull and flat looking, and I don't know, it doesn't seem like it would be as hardened and durable as the original. But the original one has a lot of groove and wear marks in it from being in service for so many years. We're going to go ahead and go with the new ones they gave us with the kit, and we'll just have to remember to keep our different socket ratchet tips always, our hex tips always handy for the ratchet, because it's going to be a different size than what we're used to using. Now make sure you torque these back bolts down really tight on this bracket. I've had them come loose before, and it's kind of scary because it makes a lot of noise, and it's really hard on the new parts you just put in too. We'll put the spec for that here on the screen for you to see what the spec is. Alright, another tip. Don't forget your hardware. There's 4 pieces of these little stainless steel sliders here, and they go on each corner of your caliper mounting plate, and they go in opposite directions. The ones on top go with the flat side facing upward, and the ones on bottom go with the flat side facing downward. And the best way to put these on, I found, is to hook the springy side, the side that's not flat, over where it goes first. So what I did on these, I started by angling this like that over so the springy part is in place. I put my finger on that and held it lightly, and then I tapped very gently on the other end with actually I used this end of this used brake pad. It looks almost like a little hammer there. I just very lightly tapped it, and it popped right into place. So there's your expert installation tip of the day for the hardware. Right, you can see the hardware is on there now, the little stainless steel slides. We're going to apply a little dab of brake grease to those, as well as to the bolts that hold the slide bolts that hold the caliper on. But first we're going to set the new brake pads in place, taking very great care to make sure they're clean and not contaminated and don't touch anything. And these are the AutoZone brand lifetime, but they were free because I've changed the brakes before on this, and I like getting lifetime brake pads. I know some people swear by Motorcraft, which is great, but for the brake pads, something that gets consumed every couple of years, I like going with the lifetime warranty things. Alright, don't forget your tensioner spring here and your dust clamps on the back of the bolt covers. The tensioner spring I did by starting the bottom side in the hole first, and then manually pulling this out over here, and then I hooked this over this side here, grabbed this with a pair of pliers, pulled it back, and pushed it into place. That seemed to be the easiest way to do that. Now everything's all in place. The brake pads look like they're right where they're supposed to be. They're lined up in their little grooves here. I think we're good to go, other than removing the fluid line and mounting the fluid line on the new caliper. And we're going to lose some fluid when we do that, but that can't be helped. We will bleed the brakes here at the bleed air fitting once we get it tightened down. Alright, we're all done with the driver's side, down off the jack, ready to go. Brake pads, rotor, caliper. 2 hours start to finish, including bleeding the brakes. Alright, this side here did not need a new caliper. just cleaned everything up, put the new rotor and brake pads on, and this was 50 minutes from start to finish right now. So I suppose by the time I put the wheel back on, it'll be 55 minutes. Alright, here's all the tools that we used in this process. Of course, we got the floor jack down here, but you know, that kind of goes without saying. We have a large pry bar for pulling the caliper off of the housing. We have the 24-inch half-inch drive breaker bar, which obviously has a lot of uses here. 21mm socket that we use to take the lug nuts off with. 18mm socket that was used to remove the caliper mounting bracket. 7mm hex socket that was used to install the new caliper slide bolts. 9mm hex socket that was used to remove the original hex bolts. A 14mm socket used to remove the banjo bolt for the brake line for the new caliper. And a 10mm box end, one of my favorite wrenches here. It's a nice grip to it. That was used to loosen the bleeder screw for the brakes. A pair of pliers just in case. I won't tell you what I use those for. And that's it. There's really just, well, I will tell you what I used them for. I used them to clamp down the brake hose on the front brake line before I pulled the caliper off. Really don't recommend it because you take a risk of damaging the brake hose and then having to replace it. But it felt pretty flexible. I clamped down on just a little bit without going too tight to keep too much brake fluid from running out while I had it apart. So there you go. I admit it. It wasn't a great idea, but it worked out this time. Probably shouldn't do it yourself though. So that's all the tools you need to do this. Not very many at all. And you can get this, like I say, if you're just doing one caliper and rotor brake job on one corner, you can get that done in about 2 hours. If you've never done it before, shouldn't be much more than that either, about 2 hours I'd say. If I was hurrying and had all my tools lined up, I wasn't filming, I could have probably got it done in an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes. And the other side, like I said, we just did the pads and rotors on this side, and I say that was a little under an hour. Saved a ton of money. You can too. Don't be afraid to tackle these jobs yourself. You can do it. You can save a ton of money yourself. Get this job done. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye for now.